We are going to talk about coil building now. Coil building is a really, really handy technique. It's super versatile. You can build a lot of different things with it, and you just have to remember the sort of basic rules of what we do with coil building. For our project, we're going to build a cone that has a diameter base of about 4 to 5 inches wide and 6 inches tall. So I've got a slab that I cut out. It's nice and soft. That is about 4.5 inches wide, and I'm going to start coiling. Now, coiling is based off of units of clay that are coils. So I can take some soft clay, and it doesn't have to be perfectly wedged because you're coiling it. So there are a couple ways to roll coils. You can roll them in your hand, or you can roll them on a surface. I'll show you both ways of doing it. So first, either way, you start off by taking a piece of clay and kind of getting it into a log-shaped format. If I'm doing it in my hand, I'm going to hold it between my hands and start to work it back and forth. I'm sort of moving my hands, not just back and forth, but kind of like in a W pattern, to push the clay through my hands and start elongating it. You can see it's starting to get longer. It's still rather thick. So if I'm going to do that again, I usually, once it's this length, I start from the middle instead of the end. And I'll start rolling again, trying to keep it nice and round. And I'll roll it the other way. We're getting there, we're getting closer. It's still thick. I'm going to adjust my camera a little bit so you can see a little better what I'm doing. So again, I'm going to keep rolling this between my hands, starting at the middle, rolling up and flipping. I'll let it kind of dangle so you can see, and then starting at the middle again. You can see my hands. Just kind of squeezing it through. And when we start getting closer to that, you know, pinky is pretty small. It kind of depends on your pinky. I have smaller fingers. I'd say somewhere between your pinky and your ring finger size is what you need. It all depends on the size of the thing you're making. Sometimes I'll finish it on the board and try to roll it out. Make sure you have a clean board. There aren't tools or crumbs lying around. And again, we're kind of going in a W pattern and rolling this out. So I have something that's close to my finger size. I'm going to dampen this just so the outside stays nice and moist while I do the other rolling. If you're going to roll your coils out ahead of time, it's really important that you wrap them up in plastic so that they don't get hard and want to crack on you. They need to stay really, really pliant. If they start cracking, they're not going to do what they need to do. So we're going to set that aside. And again, if you're going to roll your coils out ahead of time, make sure they get wrapped up in plastic as soon as you're done making them. The other way to roll out a coil is just to do it all on the table. I will admit this isn't my preferred method. Sometimes I do it really well, sometimes they get a little folded. Our goal is to have it be nice and round. So the first thing we're going to do is get it into a log shape, and we're going to start rolling it kind of more in a W pattern, not just rolling it back and forth. Depending on how long it is, you can use both hands. I kind of have a preference to use my right hand on one side and then move to the other side and roll it out. If you start to feel it get not round, take a second, kind of try to get it back into round. We're trying to avoid it folding in on itself. We're also trying to avoid getting the end to have like a big air hole in it. So what happens is if you're only moving the outside of the clay, you're going to end up with a giant air pocket in the middle. So our goal is, like, the reason we're doing that W is we're trying to move the whole clay, not just the outside of the clay. So if you end up getting that, pay attention to your ends, because if you end up getting that kind of hole in it, you need to make sure that you kind of change the way you're doing that, and you make sure you're not trapping air, because if we trap air, we get things blowing out. So I've got my coils. Again, if you're going to do them ahead of time, make sure they're wrapped up. Here is my base for my cone. I need to score this and slip it. And depending on what order you watch the videos, this may be the first time you're doing it. So we have our scoring tool, and I'm going to use water, and I'm going to score along the edge of this, getting it nice and toothsome. I like to think about this as Velcro. So we want it to be rough, and we'll take our long coil and we're going to score that as well. And this is going to take more clay than you think it does, because the circumference is a lot. This is going to be about 13 inches worth of coil. So I'm going to add water to my scoring. We're not using a ton of water. We're not giving it a bath. You just want it to start getting a little shiny. Same thing for the coil, water on both sides. And then we're going to score again in the opposite direction, so cross hatching, getting it nice and gummy, nice and toothsome. Same thing here, nice and gummy. And now I'm going to apply my coil to my piece here, and I'm going to start, I'm holding my coil up, and I'm going to put the scored side down and start to sort of press that in, kind of give it a little squeeze as I go. We'll have done the pinching method before this, so you'll see a lot of similarities between pinching and the way that we work coils together. So I'm sort of pinching and compressing this, and then I'm going to take my knife and trim that off and compress that together. So I need to let this base firm up just a little bit. Doesn't take long, but I don't want the base to come sliding off. And I'm gonna, because I know that I need to bring my cone in, I'm gonna make sure this clay starts to move in just a little bit more as I compress it down. I'm not going to squeeze this up right away because I need clay to work with for my next coil. And just so we get a sense, this ruler is 6 inches tall. So I've got a ways to go to get to 6. But I know I need to go in. And clay loves to open up. It's much harder to keep it in. So what my goal is for doing this is to keep my clay moving inwards rather than outwards. Even if I need a cylinder out of coils, I'm still going to kind of put that coil more towards the inside because I know it's easy to open it up. It's much harder to bring it in. We can bring it in, but it's harder to do so. So I'm putting this on the inside, and I'm kind of squeezing and pushing in. When we coil build, we don't have to slip and score every layer if we can effectively work both the inside and outside together. If you get to a point in your cone, which I know you will, where you can't actually work the inside together very well, then it is essential that you slip and score every layer together. So right now I've got a layer that's pressed on, but I could just peel that off. I need to work that together. So I'm going to pull clay from the bottom, down from the top, down from the bottom, up from the top, and making a solid layer out of something that was once two separate things. So pulling clay down, pulling it up, down and up, working that all together. I'm going to do that all the way around this form. I also need to make sure those two ends that I put together are nice and filled. There are no gaps. Everything's compressed and worked together. And I do it on the inside. Everything on the inside needs to be properly worked together, clay brought up and down all around the form. So when I've worked that together, now I'm going to start thinking about moving this clay upwards as well as inwards. So I'm going to pinch, this is where my pinching comes in from when I learned how to pinch things. I'm going to pinch up and in. I want to make sure that clay is always moving in. I'm not going to pinch the rim out very thin because I need to add more coils to this. So I need to leave enough clay at the rim to make sure that I can attach the next coil. You might end up needing to cut your fingernails if they're longer doing this. If you look on the inside of my piece, there's a lot of nail marks. I can clean that up with a rib, but it sometimes can get really annoying if you've worked really hard to smooth something and you accidentally hit it with your nail. It's no fun. So I'm moving around my piece. So I've got it worked together and it's kind of opening up already. So I'm going to kind of move this in and start thinking about the shape that I need already. It's important to think about the shape you need at the beginning and you'll have less work to do at the end. So I'm going to start just kind of moving this clay in the right direction right now. Again, I'm making a cone. So it's going to come to a point at the top. Moving it in, I'm going to use this other coil that I have, and again I'm going to put this towards the inside. I'm going to push it, compress it in, and again I'm going to work the coil together, up and down. Clay from the top goes down, clay from the bottom goes up. That connection point is nice and worked over. I'm going to do that on the inside as well. I know you can't really see in there, but I'm moving the clay down from the top and up from the bottom on the inside of the piece. I'm going to start, again, I'm going to pinch up and in. Start moving that, getting some height out of that clay. It's important not to use too big of coils because they can be unwieldy and you can just get all over the place. But if your coils are really small, you won't ever get anywhere with height. It can be very frustrating. So make sure you get that nice happy medium of that sort of large pinky to small ring finger thickness. Now let's see where we're at height-wise. I'm at just under 3 inches. And I don't think I've come in halfway yet. So it was 4, no. So if my thing was 4.5, let's say 4.25, I would need this to be a little over 2 at this point, and it's not. So I need to bring this in more. So first I'm going to work on shaping it with my serrated ribs. Serrated ribs are really nice for smoothing and shaping because you can really work the surface together that way and start to move it. I think it's a nice way to kind of get all those lumps and bumps out, and I like to use it midway and throughout the process, so I'm not waiting till the end and having to deal with a lot of really lumpy things. So I know I need to bring this in, and I need to bring this in to about 2.25. So when I bring in clay, I need to cut it in quadrants so I can put it back together. So I'm going to start by cutting all the way down, almost all the way down, and I'm going to do that on the 4 cardinal directions, or like a cross. And then I'm going to start to take away material, and I'm going to do that in small amounts. So I'm going to cut towards me so I can see it, and I'm going to cut basically a V out, equal parts on either side of that straight cut. You can see what I did there. And I'm going to do that on small amounts on all 4 cuts. So that it is symmetrical. You can certainly coil build and then not have a symmetrical piece, but we're going for a symmetrical cone, so we need our cuts to be symmetrical. Take out any extra clay that got stuck in there. And then I'm not going to slip and score together yet. I'm going to push this together and see what I have. So we're at about 2.5. We need to be a little bit smaller, so I'm just going to take away the smallest amount on one of these cuts here. Do a little bit here. Put this together. Now I'm looking at about 2.25, which is what I want. So I need to slip and score these together. So I'm going to score. And I'm going to push these together. Any cuts you make, any seams need to be compressed really well so that they won't crack open, and scored together really well. I know we did scoring in other things, but we got to make sure we score in one direction, nice and toothsome, use some water, score in the other direction, and then compress together. So I'm going to then take my metal rib and holding on to supporting the seams, I'm going to start compressing and flattening out those seams. Also smoothing them out on the inside with my hand. So I'm just going to go through, smooth this piece. Those seams need a little bit of time to firm up. So while we're waiting for them to firm up, before we start messing with it too much, we'll kind of do some shaping, do some smoothing out. We're going for hyper smooth surfaces on all these pieces, so it's important to work out all those lumps and bumps. So we are, once again, just below 3 inches. We're at 2 1/4. As I work this, it might open up a little bit, and that's okay. In fact, I kind of might want it to. And I want there to be nice straight walls. I don't want curves here because I'm making a cone. So I'm going to use my paddle, which you'll each have one of, and kind of start paddling this. I can start getting my cone shape here. And if I feel like there's a curve, I can always open this up. It's always, once these set up, it's always easy to stretch clay out a little bit, not so much to put it back together. So I need, this has been sitting out, this is a little hard now. I need to roll another coil, and I'll do that quickly because I want to show you adding a coil and having to slip and score the whole thing. So if I quickly roll out this coil in my hands, and again I'm going for that kind of large pinky finger to small ring finger size. Now this coil, this layer, it's going to be really hard for me to work together on the inside. It's getting really small. So with this one, I'm going to slip and score the whole thing on because I'm not sure I'll be able to effectively work it together. Because the only reason it works to not have the piece slipped and scored is because you've worked together the inside and the outside totally. So I'm going to slip and score. And again, we're not going to drown the piece in water. We just want it to get a little shiny. Water's like the glue that holds it together. You're like gluing Velcro together. So I'm gonna compress that on, but I'm not gonna have to worry as much that I didn't get the surfaces worked together on the inside. I still want to work together as much as I can, but I know that they're slipped and scored together, and that's a big help. Make sure those get put together. You do have to give that just a minute to set up, whereas with not slipping and scoring, you can kind of immediately start doing that. I'm kind of compressing this down into my piece. Just a slightly different process, because now you've got a wet seam that needs to sort of firm up, which again doesn't take a ton of time, but some. And I want to start to, again, pinching in and up on this coil once I feel like it's nice and set. If you feel it move a little bit, give it a little bit more time to set up to the other part of the piece. You can kind of see that height growing now. And we want the thickness to be right around 1/4 of an inch for this. We don't want it to be thicker than that. So you're feeling between your fingers as you pinch, just like when you did your pinching project. You're feeling the thickness and making sure it's as consistent as it can be, which also helps promote it to not crack or warp because it's all the same consistency. I'm going to add one more coil to this, and then we can measure the height on it. Again, really important here to slip and score, because there's no way I'm going to be able to work the inside of that together very well. I'm still going to smooth it out as best I can, but it just would not be worked together. Again, I'm compressing that, pushing down, but also moving the clay up and inward. Trying to make sure that feeling the seams, making sure it's worked together and it's not overly thick in any place. I'm going to test the height here. So we're doing okay. We're about 5 inches. So we're probably going to need to let this open up a little bit so that we can keep moving up. So if I'm going to do that, that's pretty easy. I can easily sort of push this out and open it. And then I'll use a paddle to adjust the whole profile of it. Now I can reach in there, open it up. You can kind of reach in there, push it out. And then we can take our serrated rib again and work on working out all those inconsistencies. So I just want to make sure I'm thinking about my profile the whole time I'm doing this, all the way around, so it's as consistent as possible. Again, I'm at about 5 inches. And I would continue to, I'm going to continue to add coils to this. And we'll check back in as it gets, when it gets finished. So I've added some more coils to my cone, and it's now a little over 6 inches. So I need to close this up. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to kind of compress in a little bit at the top. And I'm going to take a wet piece of clay, a small piece of clay, and I'm going to slip and score it in as a plug. So if I slip and score all the way around here, both the plug and the coil. I'm going to shove that in there and kind of compress it together. So now I have a trapped air in my cone, which will help support it, though I have to remember to always pop a hole in the bottom when I'm finished before it gets too hard. So I've got an enclosed cone, and I need to work on the form of this a bit, which is good because I've got lots of things I can do that with. I've got my serrated rib, which I can start to work out all the lumps and bumps. And you might find that at a certain point you need to let this set up. We're going to see how it goes with getting that super smooth, flat, perfect cone shape. Clay is all about timing and texture, so if it's a little soft to do what you need to do, then we let it firm up just a bit, and we do it again. I really like that serrated rib for getting out all those lumps and bumps. And I know that my top is a little wide for what I need it, and there's some extra clay up there. So I might end up having to take off the top of this because it gets too tall. It gets taller than 6 inches. But that's okay because I know I have some extra clay up there. So that's fine. I also have my paddle that I can use to start paddling this shape a little bit more to get this to the shape I'm looking for. You're kind of letting that paddle you're not really like driving through as much as kind of like letting it sort of slap, kind of compress that clay together. You can already see it's starting to get a lot more consistent as far as the shape goes. Just want to be careful of the edge of the paddle. You can kind of see it's sort of making marks here. So I might need to wait just a little bit to paddle it. Let's see if I've gotten too tall, which I have gotten a little too tall. So I'm going to need to kind of cut off the top a bit of this. So I'm just going to smooth it out. I'm going to smooth out what I have, and I'm going to trim the top, and then I'm going to have to put this aside and let it firm up a bit before I do more with it. It's a little too wet for me. I'm using this rib to sort of compress. I'm not removing clay, I'm compressing the clay together. Because again, we're going to work on getting that super, super smooth exterior. Let's see, so we're at just a little over. I'm going to cut that off, and you can see there was extra clay in there, so it's not even, I might have to do that a couple times, because as I bring this together and work it up, I'm kind of stretching and pinching the top so that it thins out appropriately. You can kind of see how it's a little thicker at the top than it needs to be. So by thinning out the extra clay that I know is there, it starts to create the shape that I'm looking for as well. And let's see, where are we at height-wise? I'm probably over my height again. And as I pull this, you can kind of see that little, that's the very thin clay. And as I pull it, it kind of comes together again. And this is me working my shape down to an actual cone while also keeping it thin enough. And if I really, really need to, I could cut this like I did at the bottom, but I don't think I need to. I think I've got enough clay that I can kind of pull this like I would a handle when I'm throwing, which you'll see that in another video. All right, we're at 6 inches, and that's a pretty good point. We don't actually be a point because clay doesn't do so well with being sharp. So a rounded point is what we're going to go with. And it's fairly close to conical. I need to let this firm up a bit before I do any more shaping to this. So I'm going to put this aside. Here is my cone that we started yesterday. I had it wrapped loosely in plastic so it would set up overnight. And now we need to keep shaping this. It doesn't quite have a perfect conical shape. So first I'm going to use my paddle and I'm going to start paddling this. I want to focus on the top area here because it's kind of got a bump out that I don't like. And again, you're kind of using this like it slaps it, not so much that you're really whacking at it. I want to avoid the edges of the paddle leaving dents in this, if I can. So I'm going to be careful about how I do that. So I want you to note something. This is solid. I don't have a hole in this yet. I'm getting to the point where I will need to put a hole in it because of the air pressure. And by paddling it, you can, I don't know if you can see on the video, but the bottom is starting to bulge out a little bit because of the air pressure. So I'm gonna keep shaping, and if I feel like I need to, I'll pop a hole in it to relieve some of that pressure. But I don't want to do it too soon because I want to have that that clay there to push back to help support what I'm doing. Though it is pretty dry at this point, so it probably would be fine. You can switch to a wooden rib to make a smaller paddle, and again, you're sort of letting it slap it, not so much whacking the ever-living Jesus out of it. So I'm starting to get a better cone shape. I like this better than it was. I want to kind of rotate it from all sides. I'm going to put a hole in this just so that I can keep sort of working with it and it'll move in a little bit more than it was. This not only can help you shape it, but it does also compress the clay more, help those seams fade back, and flatten out your surface. So I'm getting much happier with that now. And once I'm happy with the form completely, I need to start surfacing this. We're trying to make these forms hyper smooth. In order to do that, we have a stages of processing. First, we use the serrated rib, and we're going to use that, and I'm only going to do a section of this because this does take a fair amount of time to do this and do it properly. So I'm going to rough up this surface, really working any minor lumps and bumps that you didn't fix with the paddle, working those together. and evening them out with the serrated rib. So there's a nice big wide area that I've done with the serrated rib. Now I'm going to go back with a flat metal rib and start to smooth that out. You always want to make sure if you're picking up any clay on your rib to clean that off, because it'll start to drag through your nice smooth surface and you'll be very upset. And you'll have to do it all over again because you had a piece of dry clay that was stuck to your rib without you knowing it. So what I'm trying to do is get rid of all of those serrations. Apply pressure. You can see I'm not like using the edge of the rib, I'm using the flat of the rib and I'm compressing it into itself. Okay, so here is the surface before, here is the serrated part, and now this is the part that I smoothed out with the flat rib, and I'm not sure how well the camera picks it up. But there is distinct sheen to the area that I did the flat rib on that doesn't exist from the original, obviously, certainly doesn't exist with the serrated. Next, I'm going to take a clean, soft rubber rib. You'll find these in the beige cabinet. And I'm going to then smooth more. I'm going to make sure I keep that rib clean if I get clay on it. And it smooths out even more with that. You're not finished. After you do that process on the whole piece, and you've cleaned up your base. So this base is a little bit messy. It needs to be addressed with clay. We don't like to leave things 90 degrees. They chip. So use a fettling knife, use your rasp, use a rib, and you're going to take away clay from the edge, and then you can smooth that back over with your finger and then your ribs to make that nice and smooth and finished as well. So once you've done those steps all around the piece and you've got an air hole in the bottom so it doesn't blow up or crack, as this dries, as you go through the stages of dryness, because right now we're at leather hard to cheese stage, as it gets through harder cheese to chocolate, we want to use this rubber rib again. We want to keep using it at all the stages, nice and clean, and keep smoothing it. That's how you get that really, really, really smooth, shiny clay surface. So don't forget to keep ribbing this piece even as it sets up. Which means you can't just take the plastic off and be done, right? You need to dry it slowly, or at least be around to rib it at those other stages. So there is my cone. Not absolutely perfect in form, but close. I'd probably do some more paddling on this. And surface-wise, you can kind of see the area that I did the smoothing on is quite a bit smoother than it is in the other areas where I didn't yet. So that is the cone, the coil built cone.